Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive us for the technical problems here. This is our first live stream, so we appreciate your patience. We're going to hopefully be able to get your questions and have a very nice discussion with Ilia Jarostchuk and Отец Dimitri Temidis. We're here, of course, because of Ilia, because Ilia is a person who became a professional athlete, which is a very difficult thing to achieve. And we as Russian Americans, as Ruskiye zarubezhniki, which is what our channel is all about, are very proud that one of our own made it into the big leagues. So without much ado, I'm not much of a sports person myself, but Athias Dimitri certainly is, and he knows Ilia's career up front. So we're going to have a very nice discussion about this. Kato, take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. As you know, I'm Kato. It's great to have Ilia with us. I haven't seen Ilia in reality Ilia, somewhat 35, 40 years. Possibly the last time I saw you was when we were in St. Louis, Cardinals, visiting you, watching you play.
Yeah, so that was 1987. So do the math. 90, 25, 35, 38, 38 years.
38 years.
Right. There's people
38 years.
There were people that weren't even born yet.
So anyway, it's good to see you. And Atец Dimitri Temidis, who I actually haven't seen you for a good maybe also 10, 12 years, right?
When was that time we sat together in some bar New Year's?
Okay. Well, anyway, it's great to see you guys here with us, right, with Yoda. The idea of RUSZAR, right? RUSZAR stands for Ruskiye zarubezhniy, and we decided that would be a nice little RUSZAR abbreviated, right, to make it sound interesting, RUSZAR. So, again, Ruskiye zarubezhniy, Russian diaspora, somewhat focused on the first or second wave of Russians in America. We're trying to save and preserve some of the history, the culture, the heritage, there used to be gatherings and actually the people that we used to know. And because today it seems like no one's really recalling this anymore. It's almost all forgotten about. So it's great to have people like you join us, Ilia. I think this is wonderful because if it's one person I had in my mind, and I'm being all honest here, it was you because you were the NFL professional football player. And when I went to see you, or when a group of us went to see you play, I mean, it was like, wow. You're there out on the field playing with serious players, right? And those questions, I actually have some questions related to that, so we'll come out with that. Now, this is also our first live feed. We're trying something new, and I'm sorry that we have a couple of glitches here in the beginning. But we eventually plan to have more of these live feeds. So, Yoda, thank you for making this work as well. He's our technical guy here, go-to guy. And if there's going to be any questions during the process, for those of you on YouTube, you could put that in chat mode, and we'll be bringing those questions up. Comments, memories, and so on. I have to admit, my phone is ringing a couple of times here, and I'm pretty sure there might be some people calling up to ask questions, or those might be text messages as well.
Yeah, use text.
So anyway,
please.
Getting back to us and well, posмотрим, right? Okay, so Ilia, explain to us, right? You're before becoming a NFL player, right? What was it that? Explain about your background. How did you get to the point of a player, but sports interested, right? Who was that? Maybe that one person that introduced you to playing football, or your upbringing, something. What made you play football? What made you get into the athletic career?
Well, first of all, there was my father was always into sports. He enjoyed it himself. He used to follow the Olympic Games, and like literally keep track of all the athletes, all the various teams, and he was very into that. He himself was a volleyball player. He played in Morocco, received even a silver medal as part of a team from Morocco that played in France as part of the national championship that they had. As Morocco was once a French colony, and so he was.
Oh wow! So he is from the. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but so he came. Your parents, your father is from Morocco. Was he born in Morocco, or?
No, he was born in Brest, Brest-Litovsk, which is now Belarus, Ukraine, and Poland, right where all the three of those countries kind of come together. But after the war, as they started to emigrate to the United States, there was a large group of people that moved to the United States through Morocco. So he grew up in Morocco for 11 years.
Wow.
And attended the French schools there. There was many of us know Отец Mitrofan, Znoska Borovsky. He was the parish priest there in Morocco, and a large colony of Moroccans. In fact, the camp where I met you and Otец Dimitri, and was part of our life, Camp NORR, was originally in Morocco, and my father was a camp member there. So he was always into sports. That's kind of how I got into sports. He was also a clergy member, as you might see. They put us both up on the screen there together, where we're out in front of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem together.
Wow. Morocco is very interesting because that makes that connection, right? So, and of course, I remember in Camp NORR that we used to attend, right? They would show those camp movies.
Yep.
And I don't know if you remember, they had this like ancient, back in the day, whatever, 32 millimeter, whatever they're called. I don't remember. But we saw Morocco, and I'm pretty sure there were actually volleyball games there as well.
Yep.
So,
yeah, volleyball was a really big sport in Morocco amongst the young people, and my father was an active player, so he was the one that got me into liking sports. But when it came to football, it all started from my mother's side of the family. Dядя Volodya, my mother's older brother, gifted us one time some football uniforms, American football uniforms for Christmas. And we all received them. My two brothers, Vasya and Sasha, Otец Alexander now, all received them on Christmas, and that's what eventually got us to looking and following American football. Although we never played organized football as part of a team up until my senior year in high school, and that's when I first started playing organized football. Prior to that, it was all European sports. So we played soccer in school. I ran track, and we didn't have volleyball, unfortunately, at the high school level in our school. But I played club volleyball and played it in camp as well. And so they were all European sports up until my senior year.
Ilya, you bring up a very interesting point here, and I want to remind, and I actually ask Otец Dima here, Otец Dimitri. Do you remember actually did we actually play football? I mean, American football in camp. Did we or did we not? The main game was always soccer, right? I think you're muted.
Wait, we can't hear Otец Dimitri. Hold on a minute.
I'm sorry. Yes, we did. Okay. We played at least one huge flag football game a year.
Is that? Oh yeah, that's right. There would be right. So, but still, American football, tackle football, we didn't actually do that.
We didn't.
Right?
No, we didn't tackle. We just played flag football or two-hand touch.
Right. So, so that's an interesting point that Ilya just actually made, right? And something a person has actually commented that to me in the talks about back in the day. Again, it was Ilya. You said you were playing also volleyball, but volleyball was not available as a high school sport, right?
Yes, we didn't have it in our high school, unfortunately. So I had to play some club volleyball with an adult men's league. I was fortunate enough to be able to play with them. But
And how old were
volleyball,
you?
soccer in the fall, and then track and field in the springtime. And then I went to camp, and in camp it was all the sports that were available to us there in the summertime.
Awesome. I I wasn't that much of a sport athlete, but I loved it when we used to play soccer in camp, and my brother was a goalie. He was always a goalie. And when the one time, я забил гол моему брату, right, when I shot the goal and I made it go, I was so happy. It was like an excitement for me. I beat my brother once, so anyway.
Just wanted to ask an
I
important question here.
can
Because
relate to the brother competition because you can well imagine my two brothers are right behind me, and it was always very competitive in sports.
And seeing a couple of the photos with your brothers, right? Your Отец Alexander is. I never realized that he was actually taller than you up until I saw the
This
photo.
Alexander is like 6'5", 6'6", so he's a big boy.
Is there a size that's considered an average size a football player has to be? I'm just curious.
Oh no, it's the one game where the disparity of sizes from one player to another is so extreme. I mean, you can go from your receivers and your cornerbacks and the people who run a lot, catch the ball in the athletic positions. They may be somewhere as small as 5'7", 5'8", weighing 170, 180 pounds, to guys that are up in the offensive and defensive linemen who are going to be in the range of 6'5" to 6'8" and 300 to 350 pounds.
Trying to picture that.
So
right,
it's odd. I can't think of another sport where you have 11 players on the field at the same time where there's such a disparity. Usually there's more, to your question, sort of like a medium range of what an athlete for that particular game would be built like. But in football, it's such a unique sport in that there are so many different assignments, various jobs. You're either a bulldozer in the front, when you have to be this, massive human being and be able to push bodies out of the way or protect your quarterback, or you got to be this light, swift, elite athlete that can run, jump, and be very athletic at catching the ball, and that requires a completely different physique. So it's a variable in that case. And in my particular position, the one that I played as a linebacker on defense, I was right in the middle between the two. I may be called upon at one point in time to take on one of those 350-pound linemen as he comes running out to me and he tries to get me out of position. Or at the same time, I may have a small running back coming out of the backfield that all of a sudden I got to cover man-to-man as the quarterback is trying to throw him the ball. And so you got to be swift, athletic, but at the same time strong enough to handle some of these massive men that are coming to try to take your head off.
just to ask here for a second.
It's
So
still-
just if you can explain, this is the picture we're looking at. So take us through. Who is this?
Oh, this picture is at the University of New Hampshire. It just so turned out that the only school that offered me an athletic scholarship after my 1 year of playing high school football was the University of New Hampshire. My parents didn't have the means to send me to college and pay for it. So because I had an athletic scholarship there to go and get an engineering degree, I took the scholarship and I went there. And then to follow, my brother Vasya, number 53 in this picture. I'm 46. So Vasya's 53, the second brother. He was 2 years behind me academically. He also got a scholarship to the University of New Hampshire. The tough one came when it came down to the third one. It's Alexander, my brother in the middle, number 88. He was heavily recruited at that time by Syracuse University, but yet at the same time he wanted to get an engineering degree. And when you go play for a big school like a Division 1A school like Syracuse, football comes first, and then you build your academic schedule around your practices and other football obligations. at the University of New Hampshire, they made a commitment to him that he would get his engineering degree would be his priority, and then he would build his football career around that. So he ended up choosing to come to play with us together, and we became known as the Russian Front in New Hampshire. And the irony of the whole story was the coach at Syracuse University that lost my brother as a recruit ended up being my coach at the New England Patriots. Oh. So you can imagine what it felt like walking into his office as soon as he became the new head coach. And the first question I asked him was, Coach, no hard feelings about that whole situation with my brother not going to Syracuse. Because he was sort of really upset that he didn't come there, but I think he understood the camaraderie that we had growing up, the closeness, and my brother Ed did end up getting a chemical engineering degree and is doing very well professionally now.
Wow, it's amazing, right? That three of you, and you called a Russian Front.
Yes.
Who nicknamed that? That's curious.
That came from our linebacking coach at the University of New Hampshire. He was both a football coach and a hockey coach. And New Hampshire, the University of New Hampshire, has an extremely successful hockey team. And our coach, who coached hockey and football at UNH, also coached the junior national team for the United States. So they would travel to Russia and play there. So he got to know Russians and Russian athletes, and he had a certain affection for all of us, and as a result, he would relate to us and call us the Russian Front, or sometimes he always talked about the Russian stare, the way you would look at somebody. So
interesting.
Russian stare, I like that.
Yeah, so it was Dave O'Connor was his name, a linebacking coach.
Are you still in touch with those people by any chance?
He has passed away since, so he's no longer. But I did keep in touch with him afterwards. After I graduated, he would follow me through the various training camps with the various teams that I was with. He would visit me out in Colorado when we had the joint training camp between the Cardinals and the Broncos out there. I all of a sudden hear my name being yelled from the bleachers, and I turn around and there's Coach O'Connor standing there, and he went and came to the New England Patriots training camp a couple times, visited there. So yeah, he would follow us. He always had we were like his children. He never got married, never had any sons, so the players were like his kids. But yeah, so I kept in touch with him for a little bit, but he's no longer here anymore.
Sure. We're talking about ages ago, I understand. So it's hard to imagine. This is like 35, 40 years ago.
This is 40 years ago
right?
now, yes.
Amazing. Father Dimitri, do you have any questions at this point? You're good?
I'm good.
Okay. Actually, I have a question for you, Dimitri. It's interesting, we started talking about молодежные организации. So we talked about NORR. We touched on NORR, where you all know each other from. I'm an Iru person, so we're a parallel organization, but also really into sports. There were also Sakala that were focused entirely on sports. It was a pan-Slavic organization. But can you also speak to the spiritual component of sports? Because I never quite thought of it that way until I got a little older, because I was never really athletically minded as a kid. And you've obviously seen a lot of kids and NORR and elsewhere involved in sports. So maybe you could talk to that a little bit.
Are you sure you want me to?
I am sure.
Yeah.
All right. I think sports on a level in a camp is fine, where it's friendly, not very competitive, where there is an easy way to control the emotion. Святой Иоанn Шанghайский in San Francisco, he said he was very much against organized sports. And his reasoning was that it brings out passion. It brings out the passion in a person. And he actually spoke on it a lot. So from that perspective, when people get a little bit too emotional, people allow it to run their lives, it's not a good thing. If you remember, I think in the 90s, there was a very, very good Colombian World Cup soccer team, and they were actually projected to possibly win the World Cup. And one of their defenders accidentally scored an own goal and knocked them out of the competition. He was killed by his countrymen.
Wow.
That's how serious and that's how dangerous it is. However, I do want to share something with you that maybe not anybody besides me knows, and I think it's important. It gives you some insight as far as how Ilia approached his life in the NFL. And when we all went to St. Louis, it was a big group. I think it was 87. I think Ilia mentioned it. Everybody slept. There was one room with like 15 guys in it, and the minute they opened the door, everybody ran and everybody jumped on a bed or on a spot or a couch or whatever. And I'm standing there. I'm like, I got nowhere to go, so I just bunked down in Ilia's room, like down the hall. And we talked. And one important thing is that they did not back then, I don't know, today it looks like it's different. They did not allow jewelry for the players to wear jewelry while they're playing football. And to me, that was a concern. And Ilia took his cross off, took it off the chain, and taped it to his shoulder pads in the middle of his chest. So that to me was very comforting, and that to me showed the seriousness and the dedication of Ilia to not just succeed in his professional life, but to do it with God in his life alongside his professional career. So, from my perspective, and if you ever read the Holy Fathers, they talk about how emotions are, that's one of the hardest things for people to control, and that's what actually brings the worst out in people. So if you can control your emotion, you can control your life. And when sports takes over your life where you can't control your emotions, it's a very dangerous thing. From that perspective. And on the other side, as I explained to you, this very young man, I mean, I don't remember what year Ilia was born or how old he is, but what was it, 87? That's probably his rookie year. Is that your rookie year? 87?
Yeah, rookie year, 87.
So, Ilia, what, 22, 23?
About 22.
Young and still
23, yeah.
Thought it important enough to have his Kriestik with him the whole time.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's very, it's nice to hear that our faith was so important. And it's not just a jewelry piece, it's a cross, it's a symbol, right? It's part of us. You kind of, again, I'm recalling, as you were speaking, all of a sudden I remembered two people, two priests, Atis Georgi Sheremetyev, who used to play soccer with us in Camp NORR, in his Protodeacon,
Yep.
running around. I mean, that was a very interesting sight to see, but he was serious about it. And kind of before our time, I mean, we're all too young, Atis Serafim Slobodskoy, he actually also wrote Zakon Borzhy, but he actually would play also sports with the children. And he was trying, I forgot the name of the Russian sport where they throw the stick and try to hit the other sticks. Goretsky, that's it. He tried to get that going in Camp NORR in the beginning, in the 60s. I mean, that's kind of before us joining in. But anyway, as long as it's not harmful, I guess per se, it was okay to play sports. But yeah, your points are very interesting. Thank you for bringing that up, Dima.
Well, I think just to point out that a lot of professions have tricky spiritual components to them. And, take, for example, an engineer who starts developing weaponry, for example. Take, for example, a person that decides to start a liquor store. Take, for example, someone who goes into the entertainment business. Whoa, that's a huge one right there, right? And in some ways, sports and entertainment are related, right? I mean, I think it's obviously, an athlete is a much more involved thing on many levels than being an actor, right? You have to work on your body a lot, right? It's a major part of it. So anyway, yeah, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, how did you? Because obviously your dad was is a deacon, a protodeacon,
Yep.
and you're involved in the church from infancy. So
Well, I think that sports are good in the sense that they teach you self-discipline, training. You have to, overcome all kinds of obstacles and persevere going through them. It makes you, able to endure things, all good traits that will come handy for you in life. But to Dimitri's point, it's just like consuming, I'm going to say, let's say alcohol, for example. A little bit is good; it warms the heart. So it even says in the Bible. But if you consume too much, is blood. You can the passions get a little bit invoked, and then it's you sort of can lose control of yourself, and it can become a problem. So if sports becomes an addiction, or if it becomes the sole purpose of your existence, then of course that's a problem. It's like with anything else. But if you're doing it in moderation to keep yourself healthy, and or to sort of keep yourself as a young man from getting involved into other things, which are probably considerably more dangerous, then hanging out in gangs and things like that. It's a way of releasing that extra energy that sometimes young men have inside them. Now, at the professional level, to Dimitri's point, there are a lot of temptations that come along with that. You start to meet people and relate to people in society that aren't, the people that you grew up with in Jordanville Monastery or someplace like that. You have different value systems, and then all the temptations kind of come along with that. And I was fortunate enough that I always had people like my father, who always mentioned to me, don't lose your head where you're going with this, and the spiritual guidance that I had from the monks at the Jordanville Monastery near where I grew up in upstate New York, that kind of kept me balanced in that regard. And I'm not going to say that I was perfect. And to that point, it's kind of interesting. I had an interesting scenario that happened with Ilia Jarostchuk, to Dimitri's point, that was the last team that I played for, was the San Francisco 49ers. When I was initially signed to a contract there, a friend of mine, Petya Lukianov, picked me up at the airport. And the first thing that I asked him when he got me was, I always heard about this great cathedral in San Francisco, and I always heard about the holy man that was buried there underneath the altar. And I said, can you take me there? I want to go see this place. I had never seen it before. And I got there as a football player, but he picks me up, and the first place we go is to the cathedral. His father was the kluchar. He held the keys to the door in the cathedral. And so I went and I got a candle, and I went down. Back then, Bishop John was not canonized yet, but I went downstairs and I put a candle up next to his place of burial and said a prayer, thanking him for bringing me to San Francisco, where I thought, if I'm going to play here, there's a large Russian community, a giant, beautiful church, a wonderful choir, because I used to like to sing in the choir, that I could participate in. And I thought that I was going to potentially meet my spouse there, settle there, and live there for the rest of my life. And so I put the candle up, and then I go into the training camp that week. And, this was on Monday that I arrived there. And by Thursday of that week of practice, the coach calls me in and he says, we have a little bit of a dilemma. One of our players just injured a hamstring, and we don't want to put them on injured reserve because we're going to lose them for 6 weeks. We need to put you back on waivers, meaning let you go, so we can bring in a person that plays in his position. And no sooner than I got there, all of a sudden I was on the waiver wire again, never got to play. The whole year went by, they never re-signed me, and all of a sudden the following year they called me back a second time. I go there again, and I go to the cathedral. I put the candle up a second time for Bishop John before I go into practice the following week. Went to the liturgy that Sunday and everything else. Same thing happened. Another situation, All of a sudden, I have to get waived. I'm no longer with the team. Midweek, they end up cutting me again. The third time they signed me, and I showed up to put my candle up downstairs at Bishop John's place of burial, I was already asking to myself, I go, is there something that I'm doing in my life that maybe he doesn't particularly approve of? Why is this not working out for me? And I don't know what those reasons are. And maybe to Dimitri's point is that he foresaw that if I ended up continuing my career at the point that I was right now, that it may have been more detrimental to me than spiritually beneficial. Up until that point, maybe I kept a balance between church and sport and all the other social things and everything else. But maybe he felt like I'm getting to the point where it's maybe going to be too much for me and I might lose my soul. So it didn't work out. The picture you have on the screen right now is actually my last football game that I did play one game there in San Francisco. And it was where my career ended. After that, I never played again. So, like I said, I wouldn't discourage young men, particularly from playing sports, or even young ladies. I think there's a beneficial side to it, but I think Sivo хорошего понемножку and keep it all in perspective. Don't let it overwhelm you in your life.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's now we got to the end, but I'd rather get back to the beginning. So, how did it progress from your years at the University of New Hampshire to get into NFL? What happened there? What clicked? Someone saw you and put you in, or not to make it.
Well, it was it all was kind of funny in that I was always motivated by people that were sort of questioning or doubting that I could do something. And then as soon as somebody said, this can't be done or you can't reach this particular milestone, then it kind of motivated me to work at it extra hard. And so the first one that kind of put me into that sphere was my own father. Because when I came to him and asked him to play football, even at the high school level, he said, because I told him my reasoning was, Pop, maybe I can get a scholarship to go play at the collegiate level, because they were not offering soccer scholarships at that point in time. Soccer was not a popular sport in America yet. So he looked at me and he says, you don't have a chance of, getting a scholarship, to play in college. Don't think like that. And so that kind of motivated me to play hard in high school. When I finally did get a scholarship to go to the University of New Hampshire and played there, my head coach kind of said the same thing. He said, I don't know if you have what it takes to play in the NFL. And when he kind of questioned my ability there to move up to the next level, it motivated me to work even harder. And so I would, spend extra time training and working out, and to the point where, I was able to, make it into the big league. So I guess I was motivated by that. And then, like I said, for some reason, God did bless me with whatever ability that I had, for whatever reason that was. Maybe there was a reason that I had to make it, into the league, like to experience the whole experience, to be able to share that, motivate other young people. I don't know. But I knew that once I got to the stage of my career where it was maybe getting to my head a little bit, and maybe then it was I was kind of taken out of that environment.
I think everyone, when we found out that you're making it to a big-time, big league NFL player, we all lit up. And we were anxious to see you out there. And so I still remember, I wish I would, today we've got the internet and we've got all these gadgets to record everything that's happening yesterday, today, tomorrow, right? With AI. But to see you play on television, on cable TV, but to see you play, and when your name was brought up more than a couple of times, and they were saying, we're talking about glasnost perestroika years, right? That everything Russian seemed to be like developing, like there's going to be a future between Russia and America and so on. And so your name was hard to describe. I remember people tripping on your last name or not knowing how to pronounce it on television. And yet they were saying you're of Russian descent, your parents are from Russia or something like that. I wish I could recall those words if I were able to record that. But still to see you on that, to see you, right, that's also interesting photo, thanks to Dimitri finding that. But to see you step out on that field, do you remember the first time when you actually started playing, the very first game? I'm pretty sure it was live television as well. What was that feeling of stepping in and putting your foot on the football field and showing that you're there? What was that feeling? What happened?
All right, so the very first time that I stepped onto a pro football field was in Cleveland. It was in the the Cleveland Browns that the year previous to that were in the AFC Championship game, meaning that they had a really, really good team. They just got knocked out by the Broncos that ended up going on and playing in the Super Bowl. So the fans were very, very excited about getting the season started, and there were 80,000 people packed into the stands, and they had the dog pound there in the end zone, and it was just like very, very lively crowd. And my position on the opening play was I was on the kickoff return team. I was standing right in the middle of the field, the front five players that would drop back and try to block for the kickoff return. And because I was in the geometric center of the field, it was a circular stadium. It's an old baseball stadium. They play football in as well. All of the vocal, like the center point, was all in the middle. And when the crowd kind of geared up right before the opening kickoff with the loud sort of sound, I could feel like it was like standing in front of a giant speaker at a rock concert or something like that. You could feel the vibration in your chest because, I was like, wow, I never experienced anything like that. So it was kind of, it made you very, very intimidated. You almost, you're like, wow. I've never experienced that before.
Wow, that's actually, I can't imagine it. Right, I was on the other side of the television set watching you play several times, right? And
but unfortunately, my name was mentioned for the wrong reason on that very first play because everything that happened in practice happened at one speed, but when it was at a game, it happens at a much faster pace. And I got behind the man that I was supposed to block on that play, and then ended up clipping him and getting a penalty. So the very first time my name was mentioned, it was for an unfortunate, violation of the rules. That when I came to the sideline, I remember Coach Gene Stallings from the Cardinals looked at me and he said, "It was young man. That's the quickest way not to make a roster on this club."
Wow.
Dimitri, do you have any recollections of seeing him play? Any moments that you remember seeing Ilia play?
Well, if you remember when we went to St. Louis to watch him play, and how it was bitterly cold.
Oh yes.
And it was just so much fun to be able to see your friend out on the field. But a side note, I don't remember exactly who. I think it was you and Shed went up into the stands and took your shirts off. And,
It was.
and you held up a sign because all you wanted to do was get on TV. But there's a specific decorum that players have to abide by. And Ilia got us seats right behind his bench, so we could just see Ilia like literally 100, maybe 75 feet away from us. And I'm really excited to see him, so I'm waving to him, and I'm waving. And the players have to concentrate on the game. And Ilia's walking like sideways, and I'm looking at him this way. And I'm waving, and all you see is Ilia from underneath his jacket going like this. And then keeps going. But so I got to see him twice. The second time I saw him at Giant Stadium. It was November of 1989. The reason why I remember that so well is because we grew up in camp together. So the three of us have been in camp. I don't know exactly how many years, but if you think about it, we mentioned this the other day. We spend a month together for X amount of years, 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years. So it's you're not just friends. It's like an extended family. It's these friendships that you make that last forever. And it's not just boys and boys, it's boys and girls, because there's a girls' camp and there's a boys' camp. So Ilia knew my wife, Zhenya, but he hasn't seen her in a while. And here we are showing up at Giant Stadium, and we're standing there where the players are coming out. And of course, who has to come out first? Mark Bavaro. And my wife just melts. Go, could you go get his autograph? So I went around, got Mark Bavaro's autograph, and I come back and Ilia walks out. And this was like wonderful to see him again. And he looks at Zhenya, who he hasn't seen in a really long time, looks at her, and Zhenya is literally 8 months pregnant with our first kid. And he like looks and goes, oh. Like, it's like last time they saw each other, probably playing soccer on the field in NORR. But yeah, that was an amazing sight. Ilia's eyes just go like, "Whoa, look at you!" And Zhenya's huge. One thing I did want to share with you guys. Now, this Ilia Jarostchuk told me this story. I'm not sure if who else knows about this, but do you, Yura and Kato, know what the combines are? The NFL combines are?
Yes.
Kato?
No.
So, before the draft, the NFL sponsors what's called the combine, and they invite all these players. They have to run as fast as they can. They have to catch balls. They throw balls. They tackle. Then they have to jump high. It's like a big test. One of the things that they do, and this is what Ilia was telling me. You have to understand, Ilia Jarostchuk and I had a very special relationship. We go way back, even to my younger years in camp. So we're standing there, and he says, "Oh, Ilusha, da, on мне рассказал." So he told me that he was invited to the combines. And one of the things they do, I'm not sure what day of the combines, but all the players strip down to their shorts, go on a stage, and the stage rotates. And everybody looks at them. And it's, people are talking, they're trying to pick out players. And all of a sudden, Ilia goes, Ilia's standing there, and he's looking around, and he goes, "Moo!" Like cattle. He's like, he starts to moo at all the head coaches of all the football teams. I thought that was the most funniest thing I ever heard.
Well, it kind of made you feel like livestock up there.
Exactly.
Auction.
I did see also couldn't finish the story. He was laughing so hard. So
yeah, it's a very tough field from everything I know about it, because it really it's such a competitive field, and it takes a lot of focus. And you have things like combines, which that's just a small piece of what the entire thing's about. But yeah, it really takes an extra dedication outside of what it would take to have a lot of professions, be involved in a lot of professions, just because of the sheer competition of it. And that's what I find so impressive about it, especially as I get older. I never really paid much attention to sports until I saw the work ethic that goes into succeeding.
Yeah. Wow. We lost you there maybe for a couple of seconds, but you're back, so okay. Always good.
Sorry.
Ilia, a question. We were just talking about spirituality. And another thought came to my mind. As we did before we started, that we crossed ourselves. So I'm wondering, was there a ritual? Would you pray? You said you would go down when you were at 49 in San Francisco. But I'm just curious, did you actually do a small little prayer, like across yourself?
As a team or individually?
No, as an individual yourself.
Individually, I would never ever go out on the field without saying, my prayers, and the most basic one, even at least, Tsaryu Nebesny, Heavenly King, before the start of everything, and my cross, it's a very physical, and some people would even say it to a degree, a violent game, especially back in those days. The rules have changed since a little bit to protect the players, but So because of that, you certainly wouldn't go out there without your shield, so to speak.
There you go.
And my shield, if they didn't let it wear you on a chain around your neck, it was taped to my pads. Um, yeah, you did a lot of praying.
Interesting. The reason why I'm bringing this up because just recently, right? Yesterday, day before Stanley Cup, which called the Miami Panthers won, right? Florida Panthers, right? Down in Miami. Sergei Bobrovsky has actually repeated several times he wanted to thank God and so on. And then he actually, I mean, that's so nice to hear that. It's not only that moment, there's other moments as well from other players. So, and I'm here in Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Florida. So when our Vasilevsky for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I don't know if he's also a fantastic goalie. I think predominantly all Russian goalies in NHL that play there, they're all seem like they're all Russian at times. But on his helmet, he's got a cross on his helmet. I don't know if you ever saw that, witnessed that or not. He's got a cross, which is interesting.
No, it's we don't. When you pray, you don't pray for victory.
No.
You pray that everything happens by the will of God, and that that mainly for the preservation of everybody's health. And to that degree, back in the day, I don't know how it is now. You see a lot of players; they will run out as they come out of the tunnel. They'll run across the field all the way to the other end zone, and then many of them take a knee, and you'll see them say a prayer. Back in the day when we played, we would take a knee in the locker room, and as a team, we would say the prayer, "Our Father, Otche Nash," as a team. So there is this sense of, there's spirituality amongst a lot of the players in the league. Not all of them are bad guys. I mean, you have some bad apples for sure. And like I said, there's a lot of temptations, that comes with fame, fortune, and everything else. But it's like becomes like a Hollywood lifestyle to a degree, and you have to watch out for those kinds of things. But there's also a lot of really, really good guys that are family men and very dedicated to their communities and to charity and to their various faiths that play sports, and so it's yeah.
Ilia, how about? Do you treasure still to this day any type of souvenirs, memorabilia, uniforms? Do you actually still have something like that from each, or you had to return everything? I'm just curious.
Well, no, I have a few things, keepsakes that I've collected from various teams. I always thought about at some point building kind of like a little library or something and kind of putting them all out there, but. I don't know, it's Dimitri's earlier point, I thought about it for a while, and I have all of these keepsakes. I thought, well, maybe someday I'll pass them along to somebody, but, I kind of keep them private. I have all girls. So, I was married, one time I had 2 daughters from my first marriage, and then I unfortunately went through a divorce, and afterwards had met another woman who was a widow with 3 other girls, and we just got married 3 years ago, and I ended up now with 5 girls. So football is not necessarily the prime thing that they all think about. Although they are interested, and I think the first thing that was kind of unusual for them was that when I came back to join the New England Patriots alumni club, and I went to sign my first few autographs as part of Patriots alumni, and my oldest daughter, Tatiana, she saw me doing this, and she kind of looks at me. She goes, "Papa, why do people want your signature? Are you like famous?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe I was at one time." But but she found that very amusing, and then she would hand them out in her school to her friends, and for a girl that was sort of picked on at one point, all of a sudden she became kind of like the popular girl because her father used to play for the New England Patriots, and so it helped her get through some tough times in her life, as a result of that. But I always try to encourage, my girls to say, hey, if you're given a platform, try to do something good with it. Try to do something charitable. try to stand for something good. If people are willing to listen to your voice, speak something that's going to be meaningful in life.
It's very well said. Let's take a look at some pictures here, which you were kind enough to share with us. We've seen a bunch of them already, but let's just go through them, and maybe you could just talk to each one of those.
This is
photographs.
my
So we'll start with
all my girls, so to speak. My wife Tatiana, and on her side, she's got her daughters Nadia, Katya, and Vera, from oldest to youngest. And on my side, to my right hand is immediately is my younger daughter Raya, and then Tatiana is the blonde in the far corner. She's the oldest one.
Okay. Let's see. We're actually 1 second. I'm just going to quickly go through these because they're not in the order that I put them in. So I apologize. So we'll start from the beginning here when we see you and your brothers here. So just give us a little bit of background.
All right. So like I mentioned, we saw this picture earlier. This is Christmas time. Dядя Volodya, my mother's oldest brother, gifted us these football uniforms. He used to like to follow football because he saw it as a bogatyrskaya igra, like these big, strong guys would go out there and they'd battle. And he kind of liked the whole bogatyr kind of a theme, the warrior dressed in shield and helmet and padding and that type of thing. And so he liked the game, and then he wanted to introduce it to us, so he gave us these, and that's how we first got introduced to football. It's Alexander on the far left, me in the middle, and then Vasily, my middle brother, on the far right.
One thing I want to comment on right away is that your uncle, it must have been already probably close to middle age when he probably discovered American football. He just seemed to fall in love with it.
Like I said, it's a popular sport here in this country. In America, you have your three seasonal sports, and it was always typically football in the fall, basketball in the wintertime, baseball, and eventually later on it became lacrosse as well in the springtime. And so that's what most of the boys, the popular boys in the school would go off for, these three major sports. And so the NFL was one of those that was always caught a lot of television time. It was, all their games were televised here, and then they started watching it, when they had got a TV for the first time, and they fell in love with the physicality of the game, the nature of, like I said, these bogatyri out there kind of battling it out.
Amazing. All right, let's go to the next one.
I'm sorry, could you go back to that? I'm sorry, you want to go back to the last picture? Blow that up. Does anybody notice anything about this picture?
The wall-to-wall carpeting?
No. Vasa has the Green Bay Packers uniform on, right?
Yes.
Look at his right hand. Look how he's holding his right hand. What do you see?
He's about ready to cross himself.
Exactly. Look at that.
That's because that's because it was ingrained how you hold your hand, I guess. The other interesting thing is Dядя Volodya was always make sure that we would always pick, he picked out what at that time was the best teams in the league. So it was the Baltimore Colts, which is what I got, the Green Bay Packers, which what Vasa got, and Sasha, actually, that's a Jets uniform. You don't really see it, but that's an old New York Jets. The days of Joe Namath, so to speak.
Excellent.
Okay, we'll take a look at the next one now, which we've already seen, but again.
This is the way, like I said, when we went to the University of the New Hampshire, the Russian front, so to speak. And it's the first year when Alexander got there as a freshman. And yes, he was the biggest and tallest of all of us.
Wow. Okay, so now we'll see a little time machine here. Oops, excuse me.
Time lapse was the next one. That is obviously, 25 years later. The university did a little article about where we kind of all ended up in the whole Russian front story. This was, it's kind of interesting in that when I was a young kid, from the first picture when we were little, that was the time of the Cold War, the first Cold War, if you want to call it that. Right. And, this picture right here, the one you see, is when everything is, the West has kind of opened up to working with Russia, and everything was going well here at this point in time. So they did an article about the Russian front. And of course, now we're back into sort of a semi-Cold War status again. ironically, back to where I was when I was a kid. So this one was during a time where there wasn't as big attention, and he did this article on our brotherhood, our family in the Russian front.
Wonderful. All right, and speaking of family, just to talk briefly where you are here.
We went 10 years ago. This is a 10-year-old picture to the Holy Land, and that my father has since passed. He passed last year in April, this was a big memory for me. It was an exceptional trip that I got to be able to take with him to spend 2 weeks there. I was his roommate during the trip.
Wonderful.
I just want to say one thing for how I remember your father. One thing is in camp, right? But is I think the biggest moment is when he used to sing Anathema, at Jordanville. And just like I said, Andrei Popkov took over that position at one point at Weber to cover him. But your father was known for that he had such a strong and powerful voice, right? Not a typical deacon could carry on that Торжество Православия, right? Like Отец Andrei Popkov, a very strong voice, very strong out there. And your father, I remember that. So, and seeing your father, he was a sturdy man. He was serious. In camp, I remember. Your parents were actually your entire family, right? So all of you were to see and to joke and like Dimitri said, we were one big family there, and it was always great to see everyone because everyone. Sure, I actually remember one year when you just became the начальник, right? I forgot with who you were in there that tent.
Andrei Holodny. Andrei Holodny.
Andrei Holodny, right? And then again, somehow next year you're already getting to be someone in pro football. I don't remember exactly the years, but we're talking about what, 1981, 1982, or something was happening there. I don't remember. Maybe 84. I don't remember those years. But I remember when you became more involved with sports and seriously noticeable. You were very active. And if you recall, we were talking about this the other day before we got together here today, is when that one moment when NORR, Camp NORR and Camp Arur ended up playing soccer against each other, right? And it was out of the order because we were like rivals, and yet here we played soccer. Do you remember who won by any chance?
Arur.
We did,
Arur,
right?
really?
Yeah.
2-1 or something like that, or
6-1.
6? Was it that much?
6-1.
Oh wow!
Interesting.
Anyways,
all right, let's move on to the next one.
This is just my two older daughters at Gillette Stadium and myself. Like I said, I was the part of the New England Patriots Alumni Club, which is a group of retired players that would come back and do charitable activities in our community. And we would sometimes gather at these games. I would bring my daughters to the games to participate in some of the charitable endeavors that we did there.
Very nice.
And this is my wife Tanya and I also in the middle. You probably noticed it's Gillette Stadium, but probably confused by the soccer goalposts in the background. But this is in the off season charitable event that we both did and attended there. And they do have the Revolution who plays there at Gillette Stadium as well, a soccer team now. Soccer has come a long way as far as a sport here in America. Back when I was, growing up in high school, it was not all that popular. But now, the World Cup is coming here pretty soon in the next one. So.
Wow. Oh, we saw this one.
Yep,
let's see if we got some more here. Okay.
Back to the original photos. That's New England Patriots as an outside linebacker, playing against the Indianapolis Colts at that time. Yep. And
is there any kind of interesting context here?
Yes. So this is New England playing the New York Giants, Giant Stadium. And Ilia, that's Ilia running toward Mark Bavaro, who just caught a pass and scored a touchdown. Unfortunately, can't see it really well, but Ilia has his arm out, and he's yelling at the ref because Mark Bavaro stepped out of bounds, and it was not a touchdown. But it was really, and I saw this game live, and thanks to Ilia giving me a tip, I can find it on YouTube now. Unfortunately, the graphics aren't great, but it's really, this is the game that Ilia started, and it was a lot of fun to watch. I couldn't find the picture, but there was a CBS game. I think it may have been one of the holiday games where Ilia started also. I think it was the Patriots against the Denver Broncos, and Ilia recovered a fumble, and they're all talking about their. It was just really. It's just so nice knowing that this is your childhood friend, and the sportscasters are saying his name over and over on the TV, and he actually just did a good thing for his team. He recovered a fumble, so I enjoyed it very much.
Nice. Okay. And here, what do we have here?
This is the New England Patriots linebacking core. So back in the day, I'm on number 50, obviously on the left side, and everybody else. There's a couple of Pro Bowlers here and a couple of Hall of Fame members. Andre Tippett, number 56, holding the football, with his being his left hand. He's a Hall of Famer in the NFL. But that was our staff here in 1991.
Nice.
And then the last play out in San Francisco.
Right.
Last game.
Very nice. Okay. We actually have a few comments here that I'd like to read. So first one is, just 1 second here. Okay. So Vasily says, "Привет," whoever Vasily is, "Привет." Andrei Maximov, who is from the West Coast, go Niners. Ivan Podvalov. I happen to know a Russian family in Los Angeles who came here in the early 1920s. One of them was Andy von Son, who in 1960s played for UCLA and was team captain, and in 1964 to 65 played NFL for LA Rams. I don't know, does that ring a bell?
Well,
1960.
1964 was when I was born, so I that would be predating the NFL as we know it. So
yeah,
that would be the original, like before the Super Bowl NFL.
So yeah, I'm just obviously this is just in lore. In lore, have you encountered this or not? That was okay. Okay. Another question here, Dr. Nicholas Ganson. Ilia, among other things, is a fantastic bass in his church choir and hardly ever misses a church service. Could he say a few words about why the divine services are so important to him?
Well, the divine services are the foundation of like a training. This is the spiritual workouts that we do to develop our spiritual life. Just like an athlete needs to go to the gym, needs to live by a certain diet. That's what church prayer services and the sacraments are in the church. If you want to succeed spiritually and you want to get to the championship to heaven, so to speak, that's what you have to do.
Very well said. Very well said. Okay, Kato. So,
well, I got a couple more questions. Yeah, sure. Well, again, returning back to when you were playing, right? The fact that you were on the field. Was there a moment when you were on that field as a linebacker and there was some important, a well-known at that time player that you felt like, wow, I'm playing against him? Was there such a moment like that?
Yeah, ironically, that actually happened in practice. When I first arrived in San Francisco and I was running the look team. A look team is the defense gives the offense a look of what the other team is going to do during, once they're up against them. And so I had to line up against the starting San Francisco 49er offense. And across from me, because I was the middle linebacker, directly in front of me, was right under the center, was Joe Montana. And so,
Wow,
because I'm
Joe
running
Montana.
practice against Joe Montana, when I first got there, I was a little overwhelmed by that because, as we know him, he's like one of the most elite quarterbacks in the entire, league, in the history of the league. He's like him. They always talked about who's better, him or Tom Brady, back and forth. The best quarterback ever. And so there I was running practice against him. So there was that little bit of a moment, like in my own brain, I thought to myself, because normally I was not too overwhelmed. I was too busy focusing on what I really had to do. But here I lined up and I looked at him, just kind of looking over the defense, calling the plays. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, that's Joe Montana.
Yeah.
It just kind of freaked me out for a second.
I mean, I could picture this yet, wow, that's a person I've read about, that I heard about, that I dreamed about, and so on. And here, yeah.
And you're lining up and you're preparing him for
You're
the
there.
next game, and you're like, whoa, that was a little reality check. But there were many very interesting players. I used to play cards with Dan Marino on the plane. Whenever we traveled. They had it one season with the Miami Dolphins, actually, ironically, back in 1988. And we ran practice against John Elway out in Denver when we were doing training camp. They joined training camps out there. These are all big time names and great players.
Amazing feeling.
To be on the field and to, I never lined up against him, but to see Lawrence Taylor on the other sideline when, here I'm the starting middle linebacker on our team, and then the other side, they got Lawrence Taylor. And I'm thinking to myself, that's why they're going to the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Oh, those are humbling kind of experiences, but yeah. I wanted to kind of touch back, if you fellows don't mind, about how we all know each other and going back to camp and how important that experience was for us and for myself growing up in our culture, in our society. I grew up in upstate New York where there was, you're all from the New York, Nyack, a very congested area of churches and community, and you had halls and events and a big cultural society there. In upstate New York, where I was from, we had the Jordanville Monastery. Well, it's a monastery. It's not exactly a center for gathering where you have and dances and social life and all that kind of thing. And then we had our parish, which is the St. John of Kronstadt parish in Utica, 20 minutes away from Jordanville. So that was a relatively small parish as well, with maybe 3 or 4 families with kids about our age that were made up that parish space. And growing up in the Cold War and being just different, being Russian, language, culture, holidays don't match up. There was this inherent fear, I think, that our relatives had about us socializing with the Amerikanцы, and mixing with their society. They're going to get you into something bad. They're going to corrupt you. They're going to get you into drugs and various other things you shouldn't be doing. You were sort of isolated. And I always felt like, boy, we're really kind of in a very, very small group here. And it wasn't until camp where all of a sudden I remember arriving there and seeing hundreds of other kids that are just like me, and from the same faith background, cultural background, raised the same way. Many of them from the same parts of the world that eventually emigrated, over here to this country. And that was an incredible experience for me to kind of raise my morale a little bit, because for a while there I felt like we were kind of part of some kind of a secret society, and we were just like a body count, and living all by myself. I mean, granted, Jordanville, beautiful church, great, spiritual experience. Would never trade that for anything. But it didn't give me a sense of a community until I kind of started to meet all of you people.
Yes, Ilia, that's the reason why we started this Razor, is to remember and start putting this all together, because we were one. We were one, just like Dima said in the beginning. We were, that was that 1 month that we were excited to get together and to share our experiences. So I'm with you on that.
I mean, and look at, we were talking yesterday about our tent. You know, in camp, as you know, we're all divided into zveno, or a tent group. It was about what, 7, 8 guys or so per tent or so. Отец Dimitri was my zvenovoy, which means the camp kind of tent leader, the older kid that sort of watched over the younger kids.
Right.
And you were in my group. You were, and it was like you lined up carrying the flag. Tall guys in the front carrying the flag.
Smaller guys in the back, right?
Shorter guys in the back. Kato was there, always bringing up the caboose somewhere. I don't know who, you know. But I remember, you know, I would always compete with who was the tallest kid with. It's Piotr Holotny. And you know, and you look at where some of these people in our group ended up. You're talking about me as a professional athlete, but there was, look at it. It's Piotr Holotny became a priest. And he became a very successful a business person in his own banking, and what he did when he went, you know, to Russia. He was very successful. Very interesting story in the life with him. He can speak on a number of, you know, subjects with you folks. We had what was the fellow who was for the Misha? I think was it
Skidan. Misha Skidan.
Misha Skidan, you know, I mean, he worked for the, was it the CIA?
State Department.
The State Department. You know,
translator, and it's still there. He's still there.
Exactly. I mean, and when I heard about his life and where he went and what he accomplished and so forth, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive in his own right. I heard about you. You went over became an entrepreneur over in Russia.
Sure, I brought in DHL to Russia. That was my first job out there to develop. So with that opportunity, I managed to travel everywhere around Russia. That was very interesting. But yeah, like you said, everybody from pretty much our troop, right, went into all these different ways and developed families, you know, and developed themselves.
And so I was actually following you guys. You guys may have not noticed this, but I was following you as well, a little envious to some degree, thinking to myself, I go, wow, when the Berlin Wall fell and the opportunities for Western businesses to come into Russia and to establish this, you know, this relationship was opening up, I was watching you guys take advantage of those opportunities, taking your culture, your language, and everything that was preserved, given to us by our parents, and you were taking it over there and you're flourishing. And I was like going, how could I possibly get involved in something like that? You know, maybe after my sports, you know, career or something like that. So, you know, kudos to you know, to Dimitri, you know, becoming a Protodeacon in the church, serving as clergy. I mean, how many of, you know, like I said, two clergy members just in our own tent right there, priest and a deacon. You know, and all of the various other accomplishments. So camp was a very unique experience, and like I said, it culturally sort of bonded us all together. The most difficult thing was, and I'll be honest with you, was I know all of our parents wanted all of us to meet Russian Orthodox Christian girls and all get, you know, married to, you know, and but the difficult thing is that when we all kind of bonded together as a family, you started to at some point realize, oh my goodness, if I started to express an interest in this young lady, you know, if something doesn't work out, like my parents and her parents are going to see each other in church and the community and everything else. It's like, this is going to be awkward. You know, if it doesn't work out, like if we don't get married, you know, what happens after that? So it was always sort of something that I kind of was very awkward with, and I'm sure the young kids struggle with maybe even today when we try to sort of get them involved in dances and events and introduce them to each other. So, you know, we got to find a creative way of getting over that, you know, that dilemma.
Barrier. Yeah.
Although I will say, both my brothers, Vasya ended up marrying Katya Burbello, who was at camp. So, and their marriage lasted 30 plus years now. And it's Alexander. My brother married Lena, who he grew up with in our parish in right there in Utica, New York, next to Jordanville. They've known each other since they were kids. So who would have ever thought, you know? But they got over that hump somehow.
Dimitri also, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? after so many years too.
So
So
now that
Well, I
we're
think what's interesting is
we're
now.
trying to unite our children, to kind of get involved in these things. These are, I want to support this because I think the camp, and I still do to this day, I go there and donate some time, a week, a year, where I go and work with the kids in sports and just, and help with the counseling there and everything else. The NORR Cup, the famous NORR Cup that they always like to do, I kind of run that show for them. But
Speaking of which, sorry to interrupt you. So we had a comment from Andrei Maximov just on that. He says,
Yep.
"Yeah, thank you for all you do for camp to help make it special for our kids and future generations. Every year, my son looks forward to NORR World Cup. Many thanks."
Yeah, and I enjoy doing that, and and the kids all look forward to it. And that cup, by the way, that deacon is sitting right here in this screen. He was the one that came up with the design of the actual the cup itself. You remember taping the salad bowl to that? It's become such a tradition where initially it was just like, oh, let's just put something together, and he quickly whipped something up. It's basically a tin can, a large, I don't know what they had, tomatoes or something in there, like a large tin can, bigger than a kulich sized tin can, and then on top of it, one of those salad bowls, and it was, he took regular silver tape and taped one to the other. And that was what he presented as the first to the winners of the first ever NORR Cup. And then after that, we started a tradition, like at the Stanley Cup, we started writing the year and then the score between. It's a game between the men's camp and the boys' camp, I should say, and the girls' camp. We started writing the scores between and we kept it like the Stanley Cup. We're running out of room, by the way. It says, Dimitri, we're going to need
is that right?
We're going to need a new level. I'm writing on the bottom of the platform already at this point. So,
I actually.
That's how many years? How many years is that?
Do you remember when you first put that together? I don't remember what the first year was. It 2002, maybe?
Wow.
I don't remember.
Wow.
It's been a
25
while.
Years.
It's like
I thought it was longer than that.
Maybe it's longer, but I sort of think it was still in the 2000s. It was early 2000s.
Wow.
2002, 2005, something like that. That's when we started. We may have played the game earlier, but we never had a cup.
Yeah.
And I think you decided if we're gonna have a NORR Cup, we're gonna have to initially need a cup. So you built that in the
use the
kitchen
Stanley Cup as my example
of NORR there. So that's
Very
we
nice.
keep the same one. We didn't go buy a fancy trophy, nothing. We've taken it up, with the music and the broadcast and the various other things we do around the game, but the cup itself is the original one.
Excellent.
So they have the Stanley Cup and we have the Temidis Cup, I guess.
No, the NORR Cup.
Well, we call it the
NORR
NORR Cup.
I'll have to ask what the competition in Edut is doing, and see if maybe we can get you guys together to play again.
Well, I also want to, if there's an opportunity to do that, to unite the two camps, to kind of come in a friendly way and then competitive athletic event between the two, I think that experience, I'll never forget that time when you all came to visit our camp. It was it was like we looked forward to having you as guests, and I hope that it would have continued onward. Somehow or other, unfortunately, various little infighting. Sometimes it happens with very closely knit cultures like ours. That kind of thing kind of dissipated for a while, but I really enjoyed that experience. Plus, there's the reality of I think there's also travel, expense, and maybe even to some degree insurance-related issues that, kind of complicate things. It's not as easy as maybe it was back then. We just jumped on a bus and the gal came over.
Well, see, that's a very valid point, because back then you can jump on a bus and come over.
Yeah.
Today, if you have to, because of the insurance regulations, if you're going to leave the property, you have to present the plan 6 months in advance for it to be approved by the health insurance, by health department, in order for you to be able to take kids off the property. It's a real hassle.
Wild.
Well, perhaps there's still an opportunity to have a game somewhat centralized, not during camp season, but actually doing old timers, whatever, where we would, again, off camp, be it like a Trado or something like that, where they do have a soccer field or something. So maybe there's something still in the making. Maybe people from Arur and people from NORR will hear this and create something.
I'll pass it on to my people.
My people will call your people.
That's right. Okay, well, a couple of more comments here. Andrei Maximov says we should have a reunion of soccer game old timers. Vasya Sertsev, Iggy, Starishok, Shatov, Andrei, Holodny.
Just make sure there's 3 ambulances parked on the sideline. Right? Do we have any? We got some EMTs, right?
Just don't tell the insurance company. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we had a very interesting discussion. We covered a lot of interesting things because this wasn't just about sports, and that was never really our intention to just talk about the sport aspect. We talked about how this is all part of our Russian upbringing, your Russian upbringing specifically, and how you made your path to such an interesting career that so many people would envy. And at the same time, how your Russian Orthodox identity stayed with you all this time. I think that's really an impressive story, and I hope whoever watches this and is really interested in athletics is going to take note of that.
Yeah, and I sometimes get asked to come to speak to the young men. They have a camp in Jordanville now where they have summer boys, they call it. They come there, they work there, they learn about, what goes on in Jordanville. And they have me come and speak to them a little bit about, athletics and those kinds of things. And to the points that we brought up today, like I said, всего хорошего понемножку, в меру. It's athletics, I think, have a place in our society. And I think they're healthy for kids, but it can't become something that you become overly obsessed with to the point where it starts to rule or ruin your life spiritually or otherwise. So,
as with everything else, essentially.
Yep. Good balance in all things.
Well, Kata, I think this was really a very interesting discussion. I hope we can also get some more discussions with athletes here. And
not just, but as you could see, it's what unites us all, right? Is our Russian background, right? We're Americans. We lived through the Cold War 1.0. Now we're going through Cold War 2.0, I think, and hopefully it comes to an end. But if back then I felt that we were somehow separated, but we were one. The idea of this Rosh Zar is to unite us all and to cherish those moments. So I'm also the president of Russian Heritage Organization down here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And this year we'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary. January 17th, 2026, we're going to have our 30th annual Winter Ball. All of you are invited to come down if you want to. I could only share so many beds in my place, but I've got a lovely view. It won't be the hotel, but nevertheless, thank you for taking the time and effort to joining us. Ilia, it was wonderful to hear you. I think we're in the same wavelength of understanding and our interests. Dimitri, thank you for also coming out and to sharing with us, because even from a spiritual standpoint of view, or from the druzhsky, from the friendship, you made this all happen in the sense of you were the one who decided we need to go see Ilia play in St. Louis Cardinals. And we went, I think it was American Airlines that we flew, and we actually had steak, I think, on board, which won't be the case today. But we had fun all the way there. It was the year that we went to after the night before you played, we went to a club to hang out, and like you said, it was cold. It was freezing cold, and we stayed by that monument, right? The St. Louis monument, right? The arch,
the gateway to the west.
And we went up there, and we kind of we're actually up here, and then we went down. But we went to a club, and I remember that one song that stayed, and to this day it's one of my favorites. Has nothing to do with the times per se, but Dude Looks Like a Lady by Aerosmith.
Thank you very much, both, Ilia and Dimitri, for joining us.
My
Hopefully
pleasure.
it's not the last time you're with us. I think we have a lot of interesting things we could discuss. And thank our audience, of course, for watching, for the questions. And thank you, Kato.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you, gentlemen, for doing this.
Thanks for putting this together. My sister lives in Florida now near you, Kato, so I look forward to maybe stopping by and seeing you at that ball that you put on. I'll bring some.
Fantastic.
I'll bring my girls. So
I'm sure we'll have a good time.
all right.
It's worth it. I've been to the ball already.
Let me know if you guys. Let me know, Kator. Send me emails.
Will do.
Okay.
Yeah, we should go. We should go.
Всего доброго всем.
Spokojnej
And
noci.
make sure you like and subscribe. And we got plenty more things coming for you in Rossar. So, спасибо всем.
Okay.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
С Богом. До свидания.
Okay.